name is Adrienne Lowe, and I am a Senior Engineering Manager at Dutchie. I'm here to give you practical direction on how to manage underperformance with compassion. In our first session, we heard from Rod on the importance of managing performance with clarity and empathy. Rod helped us understand the context in which underperformance occurs and how to deliver feedback as observations that focus on impact. This session is about what comes next. So you've identified that your direct report is underperforming. You've thoughtfully considered the context and repeatedly set expectations verbally, but there hasn't been improvement. What's next? Now it's time to communicate to your report in a more formal and comprehensive way that they are not meeting the expectations of the role. It's time to move from conversation-based feedback to documented feedback in the performance improvement process, or PIP. From talking to writing down the expectations and pairing it with a clear action plan and regular check-ins. It's a lot of work, but this is how successful performance management works. In this session, we'll cover that clear action plan with practical advice on when and how to check in and how to provide the kind of support that will give your direct report the best chance of improvement. And we'll do this work compassionately. This is key. All of the advice offered today is with compassion at its center. This is because centering compassion in our actions drives real results and the best chance of improvement. And even when improvement isn't possible for your report, managing underperformance with compassion means that as you move into the final stage, you can feel confident that you acted with integrity and that you gave your direct report every opportunity to succeed. So before we get into the how of running a performance improvement plan, or PIP, let's spend a little time talking about the compassionate mindset we need to adopt to make successful performance management a reality. There are two attitudes you need to successfully run a PIP: a desire to help and a recognition of your responsibility. A performance improvement plan is simply a tool to give an employee with performance issues the opportunity to receive feedback and expectations in a structured way. But that tool alone won't drive the process, and it certainly won't drive success. It needs to be paired with action, and it needs to be backed up by a desire to help. So the first attitude you want to have is a real desire to help. Truly helping means working to be really clear on where they are and where you need them to be in the role. Helping means giving them necessary information about how they're not meeting expectations so that they can more realistically evaluate whether this role is right for them or whether what you've set out is achievable for them. The second attitude you want to have is a feeling of responsibility towards your direct report. This person is a member of your team, and it's your explicit job to coach them and set expectations clearly. We cannot abdicate or give up that responsibility just because things have gotten hard. Instead, we can take it as our responsibility to make expectations crystal clear and to really provide a clear roadmap of what it's going to take to move forward and be successful in the role. How do we do this? Well, when one of my direct reports is struggling, I take it as an opportunity for personal introspection. By this, I mean, I look within and I ask myself, what steps did I take to set this person up for success? What expectations have I set? Have I been clear on team processes? Did I provide a good onboarding experience? How have I failed to be clear? What can I do better? How can I be more specific and actionable and supportive with my feedback? What do I want to make clear moving forward? Anytime there's a performance issue in our reporting structure, we should take that ownership and really ask these kinds of questions, because we can't possibly write the PIP document if we haven't taken the time to really introspect and ask these questions. Remember the words of our previous speaker in session: nobody underperforms because they want to. Now, If this is true, if this is logically true, think about what you would want if you were underperforming. Remember, you're not underperforming because you want to. It's not something that you're doing on purpose. It's not something that you choose or intend, and yet it's happening. What would you want to be in that case? If you were underperforming, you would want to know. And not just know, you would want to be given the opportunity to change and try to meet expectations. You would want your manager to take the time to think through and write down the expectations and how you're not meeting them. And you would want some time and support as you sought to meet the expectations. And you remember that, like any other performance conversation, the PIP is not a time for surprises. Everything your direct report hears in the PIP, they should have heard before, multiple times before. There should be documentation of expectations and values. These things should be done and modeled by others on your team. The PIP is not the time to introduce new information about how your team works. So we've got these two attitudes. We have a desire to help. We've recognized our responsibility. We want to be clear and give the best chance at success. If you're in doubt of either of these two things, the PIP is possibly not right for you at this stage. And I think that's where a lot of managers go wrong. They don't actually have the desire to help, and they don't recognize their responsibility. They jump to PIPs, and that's a terrible time to do them. It's not setting either of you up for success, and it'll hurt you and the employee. And if you don't have these attitudes, you're not going to be able to put in the work required to run a successful performance improvement plan. Because the PIP is a lot of work, hard work. It will feel hard because it is hard. It's hard for you, and it's hard for the direct report. But the work that you're putting in is toward ending the process, feeling confident that you acted with integrity and gave your direct report every opportunity to succeed. So if you truly want to help and you recognize your responsibility to help, if you've been following your best practices of regular one-on-ones, giving candid and timely and actionable feedback, if you've been setting expectations, but you're still not seeing the results you need, then it's time for the PIP. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of that. There are 3 essential parts of a well-run PIP: a guiding document, a set of scheduled meetings, and a partnership with your HR or executive team, depending on the size and maturity of your company. Let's step through each one, starting with writing the guiding document. With the PIP, you move from that regular one-on-one verbal feedback to writing it down or documenting how your team member is not meeting or is only partially meeting expectations. I like to think in terms of where you are and where we need you to be, and communicate that to my direct report. Right now, your direct report has behaviors that are leading to outcomes, which is where they are. Unfortunately, these outcomes are not where we need them to be. Writing the document means making these 2 things explicit. So what should you focus on in your document? Well, what are the requirements of their role? Because we don't want this to be a surprise, I like to look at the documents the team member already has that outline their role. Documents are things like job descriptions or the leveling rubric, if you have one. And then I write the PIP document around those things. If your rubric is broken up into different categories like leadership, communication, technical skills, organizational impact, then you can write your narrative around those behaviors and the outcomes you're observing or not observing. Other examples might be technical contributions, working cross-functionally, self-management. Many companies already have a PIP template that you can fill out. You can ask your HR people team if one exists and use that, and improve it too if needed to make sure you're focusing on the expected behavior and outcomes. And if your company is more early stage, as I've found myself before, you may not have a template. Then you can and should work with your leadership group to create your own. I've done it. Just make sure you're focusing on those components of behavior observed, where you are, and outcome, how the outcome is not aligned to the company or role goals, and the expectations for improvement, where we need you to be. And if you have company or team core values or expectations, I enjoy tying it to those. So, in summary, ways to set you up for success. Make sure you give yourself enough time to prepare this document and really think it through. The document should emerge out of careful reflection on what's required of the role and what you've observed. Remember, the document is the foundation for the next step in the process, so make it a solid foundation. Yes, it takes time and it's hard work, but remember, the work you put in now is towards ending the process feeling confident that you acted with integrity and that you gave your report every chance to succeed. A performance improvement plan is simply a tool and a framework to give employee with performance issues the opportunity to receive feedback and expectations in a structured way. But that tool alone won't drive the process. It needs to be paired with action. So once we've written the document, it's time to deliver it. Working with your people or executive team and having another person in the room, set up the meeting to deliver that information. Make sure you've reserved enough time to go through the document thoroughly and over each point thoroughly, and allow your direct report time to ask questions and get any clarification that they may need. Make it clear to your direct report that over the next 4 to 6 weeks, you'll be meeting weekly with your direct report to check in and provide feedback, using that document to guide the conversation and check in. Why 4 to 6 weeks? Why time bound? Well, a PIP creates a time boundary that respects the team member, your team, and you. When someone isn't where they need to be, you and your team are often making up for them. And if you don't address it, it can affect your team's morale and delivery in significant ways. So once your meetings are scheduled, you have to attend them. These meetings are not optional. I once became aware of a director colleague of mine who put a very senior engineer on a PIP and then didn't show up to any of the weekly check-ins. I cared about this director, so I pulled him aside to share the why. I reminded him that it's our responsibility, what we owe our team member. We told him that they have a limited amount of time to demonstrate progress, and if we're not checking in to discuss that progress, we're really missing the mark as managers. We also owe it to our organizations to do these meetings faithfully. We need to meet and document the status of progress or lack of progress. This is crucial when performance does not improve and we need to move toward the final stage. We have to be able to demonstrate that we have been clear in our expectations and provided consistent support. A good HR or executive team should not let you move forward without it. So, to summarize, setting yourself up for success. Make these check-ins a priority on your work calendar. Allow 15 to 30 minutes buffer time both before and after these meetings to make sure that you're both prepared with the feedback and you can complete any documentation or action items after. You can update the rolling one-on-one document or your private notes to say what you covered and what feedback was given, how that was received. So, as a recap, 3 ways to set yourself up for success with self-compassion and compassion for your direct report at the center. First, remember that it feels hard because it is hard. If you're going through this and you feel like you're struggling, remember, this is not a uniquely you problem. Everyone struggles with this when they start out. Second, make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to prepare the document and really think it through. That document should emerge out of careful reflection of what's required of the role and what you've observed. Remember, the document is the foundation for the next step, so make it a solid foundation. Third and finally, make your check-ins a priority on your work calendar. Allow 15 to 30 minutes buffer time both before and after that session to make sure you're prepared with feedback and can complete any of the documentation that you need. So in closing, when it comes to compassionately managing underperformance, I know you wanted to know exactly what I really do when I have underperformance on my teams. Well, now you have it. You know my secrets. When you behave this way, you're going to get outcomes that you feel good about. What kind of outcomes? Well, I'd like to close with a brief story. Once I did a performance improvement plan that concluded with the decision to terminate. At that final conversation, when I delivered the difficult news to my direct report, had to say those words, "Today is your last day," they responded to me with the following: "Thank you so much for your leadership. for the ways that you've coached and guided and tried to help me. It's been amazing, and I'll take it with me. And in the debrief with HR after, as they received the details of their severance, they said again to HR how appreciative they were of the clear communication of expectations and support that I had provided them. When I heard this, I was stunned. It wasn't the first termination that I'd ever done by far, but it was an incredible one. I felt really grateful, and I even had tears in my eyes thinking of it afterwards. But the fact is, when you run a process with compassion, with the right mindset and the right process, you may get these kinds of results too, where everyone feels really aligned, where they really understand where they're at, where they understand what the expectations for success are. And even if they're not able to meet them for whatever reason, you both feel good about trying. I'm not saying that the person you fire will always thank you. This is probably quite rare and definitely speaks as much to that person's incredible character and temperament as it does to how effectively I manage their performance. And they were an incredible individual. But when we feel compassion for our direct report as a human, that compassion will drive the actions we need to take to successfully manage their performance. And regardless of the outcome, you can end the process feeling confident that you acted with integrity and gave your direct report clear direction, consistent support, and every opportunity to succeed. Thanks so much.